I've been a little stressed lately. A lot going on. I was asleep the other night and I was awoken from the slumber with this just violent screeching, just like,
Daryl?
and then just like a crash. And I'm just like, what was that?
Orcs.
And, I'm asking Chelsea and she's like, oh, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. And it turns out the next day, something happened in a tree, some sort of massive raccoon brawl. And one poor raccoon fell like 40, 50 feet from this tree.
To its death.
No. Well, I don't think it died. Nobody knows where it is. But it landed on like the back of the top of a car where the shell meets the glass, and it shattered the glass, and there was like little raccoon hair all around, but it was nowhere to be found.
Wow.
So it lost. It was like a
mío.
WWE raccoon brawl.
Tables and chairs match, or ladders
Yeah.
and ladders and tables match, or something like that.
Yeah, this was like the Bret Hart of raccoon. Yeah.
This was not the opener that I was ready for.
But everybody loves
Wow.
WWE. Or when I was growing up, it was WWF.
Right.
Maybe this now is WWF.
Didn't WWE, doesn't it share the acronym too with like a conservation?
That's why they had to change it.
Oh,
Yeah, it was like the World Wildlife Federation.
yeah.
Mhm.
This
And
was
this
the confluence.
raccoon brawl was the World Wildlife Federation.
Mm-hmm. Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
World
Wow.
Wildlife Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
I generally don't have like a super like, I don't know. Like, I don't imagine a lot when people are storytelling. I'm just like there, like it, I'm in it. But I am seeing in my head a raccoon falling many feet in a very like action-packed like movie situation. And I don't
Beginning of Ace Ventura 2. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's where he's like on a zip line and he's reaching down.
Oh, yeah.
And he's holding on with one hand to this raccoon that's like his friend, and it's slipping away, and the raccoon falls to its death.
Oh gosh.
No animals were hurt in the filming of that movie.
That's good, because there's a lot of animals in that movie.
Yes.
Wow.
Shannon, I'm sorry. I
That's okay. I don't, it's totally fine. I mean, please. I just wasn't expecting raccoon brawl and raccoon.
Yeah. What are they also called? Trash pandas?
Trash pandas, yeah.
Trash pandas.
Whoever does expect that, but I think they're very hardy. I think he or she is fine.
They do seem to be
are
hardy
fine.
Or
animals.
they.
That's true. The ones that I have seen do seem to be quite hardy. Is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Raccoons get to be humongous too. I don't know if you've seen like a family of raccoons by the Crocker Art Museum, but there are quite a few in those trees.
We
That was
had a family of raccoons living in the avocado tree in the backyard of the house that I grew up in, or my
That'll get a
parents
raccoon fat.
still live. The raccoons were huge, and one of them used to come in the cat door and eat the cat food, and my mom called it Bubba.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Love it.
I love raccoons.
I think they are very cute, but
my
I wouldn't want to
concern-
be in a fight with them.
No, well, my concern about this tree is that I know there is a family that lives in this tree, and I'm worried that this was a domestic dispute.
Oh no, domestics, raccoon domestics.
Yeah. I'll never know for sure what happened, but it's something I've been thinking about the last couple of days.
Well, yeah, I'm going to be thinking about it now too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it and I'm not loving it. And I'm wondering if maybe we should just start the show.
I guess. I mean, I kind of want to keep talking about raccoons, but I guess there's news.
Why don't we do a special raccoon ep sometime soon?
Love to think about that.
All right.
That'd be fun.
Well, let's just do this serious one then today, and then we'll get on
Okay.
that. All right.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Shannon.
And Bobby Roy.
We've got Bobby Roy. I don't even know if I call you like a guest host, a special guest, an old friend, a longtime patron. You're all of these things. So I'm really excited to have you here, Bobby. Just real quick, obviously, folks, Skylar is not here. Skylar's got to do some work tonight. Flo also is running the Measure U Commission, as she always does, the third Monday of every month. But we are super excited to have you here, Bobby. You are not just a longtime friend, someone I've known for oh God, 5-6 years now. You are a member leader at SEIU 1000. Talk to us. We're going to be discussing a lot of things SEIU 1000 today. But first, give us a little background on you, what member leader does, and kind of what SEIU 1000 is.
Sure. So like, it's a pleasure to be on here. My name is Bobby Roy, and I've been a member with SEIU Local 1000 since I became a state worker officially in 2006. Right away, I knew that I wanted to be part of the union because I was allowed to be. And so, and part of that reason was because I have it in my family history. My grandmother's older brother immigrated to Hawaii back in the early 1900s and worked on the pineapple and sugar plantations and became a labor leader there. And also just my love of history. I learned a lot about labor and labor leaders that were of all kinds of ethnicities and races, and just how we all fought, how they all fought for each other and fought for one another as workers. So SEIU Local 1000, as a state worker, we represent over almost 100,000 state workers, and anywhere from, custodians all the way to tax auditors, from nurses to education consultants and everything in between. And so all of the work that state workers do, we represent a lot of them and make sure that they have good wages, good living and working conditions so that they can support themselves, their families, and the state of California. So as a member leader, we say that because as a member, I ended up becoming elected into a position. So I'm currently the vice chair for bargaining unit 21, and there are 9 bargaining units. There are 9, different bargaining chairs. We're divided up into different district labor councils, over 50 of them, and each district labor council has 50 presidents. And altogether, that makes up the board of directors for the Local 1000, as well as 4 statewide officers. So
Okay.
it's a complex structure to run a complex organization that represents over 100,000 people.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think what's really important for listeners is that this is a massive labor union here in California that really has a lot of heft and weight, and historically has been very consequential politically in all sorts of directions, whatever direction they take on things. what we want to talk about today is sort of this high profile phenomenon that has taken place with SEIU Local 1000. That is the election this past, I guess it was summer or spring, of Richard Lewis Brown, Richard the Real, who was sort of this like outsider, very eccentric candidate who would go on sort of Twitter rants and sort of kind of this candidate that people did not expect to win. But some of the major factions ended up sort of splitting up, leaving an opening for Brown to win the election with somewhere around 7,000 votes. And again, this is for a union representing almost 100,000 people, right? So it's a very, very small plurality with which he won, which I suppose that's a structural thing SEIU 1000 could think about in the future, like maybe do top two round election or ranked choice voting, something like that in the future. But you know, the folks with SEIU Local 1000 are where they are with Richard Lewis Brown. He has been in office as president for 4 months, give or take. And in that 4 months, it's been a bit of a wild ride, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that I mean, you can discuss, I guess, some of the things he was saying during his campaign for election, as well as some of the things he's done since he's been elected that sort of put him in this position as being sort of this firebrand type politician.
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the things that President Brown was campaigning on early on was the cutting of dues by 50%, right? And just for anybody, if you're gonna like lower their costs, like that's gonna catch some attention. And you know, quite frankly, if you think of any organization, including a family unit, and you cut their revenue by 50%, how do you operate the same way anymore? You can't. And so just right away, anybody that, you know, like myself, when I was thinking about it, I was like, there's just no way to do it. You know, you have to absolutely cut some of the services and programs that we're running. And what SEIU Local 1000 was running was a campaign and a mission that was that all Californians can live and thrive in California, whether you are part of the union or not. And it's why, you know, we're involved in Fights for 15 and a union. It's why we're involved in so many other campaigns. We would run Black Lives Matter discussions every Friday. We have human rights committees that are fighting for just so many groups and things like that. The other thing that President Brown was campaigning on was getting out of politics. And I think that was another thing that a lot of people were into. You know, we represent a very diverse body of people from all over the state, and they run the whole gamut and the whole spectrum of political philosophies and whatnot. And, you know, there was a lot of critique that the union was, you know, that unions overall only cater to Democrats and things like that. But myself, right, even as I wear this SEIU member political organizer shirt, like I know that we invited all candidates, but not all candidates would respond. Not all candidates would want to be heard at our town halls or, you know, be out there. And more often than not, you know, the folks that were Republicans did not choose to participate. And so that, you know, would further that narrative that we were only catering to one party or one side. And it just isn't true. But as a result, that was also another campaign promise that I believe really resonated with people. I don't think that it helped that nationally we were also very divided, right, politically. And so that, you know, people were sick and tired of politics, and more and more people, right, like just think, oh, I don't want to be involved in politics, and neither should my union, neither should my, you know, the organizations that I'm in. You know, how often do you hear like, oh, don't talk politics, don't talk religion, and don't talk sports, because those are going to be the biggest fights that you're going to have, right? I think the reality is that politics is real. It affects everything that we do, and And it's so important that we remain involved in it and that we make politics what we want it to be, right? That's true democracy, where we actually make government, serve us the way that we expect it to serve us and serve one another. Other campaign promises, he had a 10-point platform, but I believe that those were the two that really resonated the most with people.
Okay.
I actually disagreed with 8 of the 10 points, and so not a fan. I still refer to him as President Brown because we did elect him. And going back to your point, I think a ranked choice voting would help ease some of these structural challenges that we had in this election.
So, that I think that all makes sense on why he would be appealing to some folks. The 50% cut to dues is always really interesting to me. It reminds me of that, like, you leave a room, the study, leave a room with a kid in front of a piece of chocolate and say, if you don't touch the chocolate, then we'll give you 3 pieces of chocolate. But, the kid's looking at that like, I want that chocolate right now.
Right.
Whereas with a union, if you are paying your full dues, that union can advocate for you so hard and get you so much more than what those dues are putting in the long run.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get mired into that because I think we actually had Jonah, another SEIU 1000 member, on before, and we sort of discussed that part of it. I want to talk a little bit about, during his campaign, he was sort of flinging some pretty heavy attacks at the president at the time. Now that he's president, he has said some really out there things. He has said that I think he said, "I am the vaccine. I am your vaccine." He's come on a fairly strong anti-vaccine stance, even coming out against the governor, I think, on a number of things there. I also know that he was trying to keep a prison open because I think there are some workers that do some things at prisons that SEIU Local 1000 represents, which I think that it certainly wasn't something I liked when I saw it. And he's I don't know, what else has he done that's been controversial in his 4 months tenure so far?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I mean, he has criticized other elected people that were also elected into office, calling them not real union people, that they've never actually been part of a real union, that SEIU Local 1000 isn't a real union. So it's a constant, it's almost like we're in an abusive relationship where we'll get criticized all the time and made to feel bad, and then let me be your savior, and I'm gonna protect you, and I'm gonna save you from all of this stuff. And bottom line, even with all the bluster, all of the ranting, constant videos and constant, what he calls transparent videos that are unscripted and things like that. At the end of the day, there's going to be, after all is said and done, there's going to be a lot that has been said, and there's not going to be a lot that has been done.
Right.
Because like there's so many promises that are being put out there that just like, it's just not gonna, it cannot be kept until this union like is united, and we really get to the point where we're moving together and we have wall-to-wall solidarity, not just even within the union, but among the different unions that represent all state workers. When we have wall-to-wall worker solidarity, that's when real transformation is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen, from one individual and their videos. It's just
that's interesting to me. And like, it should be a no-brainer, but it's something that, like, as someone who hasn't really existed in labor at all, just like I've always thought like organizing is important, making unions more robust is important, and solidarity among unions extremely important, right? To the point where, someday magically we can have a general strike or something. But just because you have a robust union does not mean that work is done. And I think that's that what's happening with SEIU Local 1000 is a really interesting sort of example of that. that the organizing never ends, it seems like. And that's a really important part of it. I think he's obviously been a divisive person within this union. And like, you know, this happens a lot within this world, but, you know, when there's a new president, there's a little house cleaning that goes on. You hire folks that are aligned with you politically. Other folks might get like pushed out or something. It seems like this was a little more intense with his cleaning of house. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it definitely appears that way. A lot of the senior staff that I had the opportunity to work with during the last two contract campaigns have left. And I don't necessarily know all the details as to why or how, but, you know, I was working with one individual, Sarah Zimmerman, on reducing healthcare rates and healthcare insurance rates and making healthcare affordable, not just for us, but for all CalPERS members and for all people that get health insurance. We were talking about prescription prices, drug costs, you know, all of those things. And that effort, and to be able to bring 100,000 people to the table on that and in those conversations, and even just to mobilize them, is super powerful. But when President Brown took over, they were let go. I was doing community power work where back in the springtime, I was working with Steve Hill, and Steve Hill was doing amazing work helping us get folks vaccinated, get folks with testing, helping the unhoused, and, you know, volunteering at Loaves and Fishes, and really mobilizing people to take that ownership of their community and to do the work outside the four walls of your state, you know, your state department. And also there, like shortly after President Brown took over, Steve left. And then we have these two lawsuits that I read about in the paper. I didn't even know about them before. But again, even that idea of getting out of government, I knew that Dima Lopez had left. I didn't realize that there were these circumstances of harassment behind it.
Yeah, tell us about these two lawsuits. What are they?
Yeah, so for Dima Lopez, they were the director of our government affairs department. And so, you know, they tracked bills. They were involved in the tracking of politics and things like that, and making sure that we kept things at the forefront and kept our finger on the pulse of what was happening in any bills that would affect us. Well, you know, again, along with that campaign promise, we're going to get out of politics. There's, you know, along with that came like, okay, we expect some reductions in this, not the whole evisceration of the department. And so what I read in the SAC-B article was that there were comments about Dima being pretty, basically harassment or sexual harassment allegations. And so the union and President Brown are being sued now. In another case, it was Brandy Lopes, who was an assistant to the president, who had to take time off to deal with some family tragedies and was grieving, and was basically let go and forced out. And so Brandy Lopes has also filed a lawsuit against the union and President Brown for unlawful termination. So, you know, even we say it as union like people, when you see a bunch of turnover in a department or in a unit, something's wrong there. And we need to inspect it a little bit more, and we need to interrogate it a little more and find out what the problem is. And so that's kind of what's going on.
So what brought about, tell us what this meeting was over the weekend, why it's sort of controversial, and what brought it about.
Yeah, so this meeting, as I understand it, there have been a number of meetings that were supposed to take place. So, for example,
These are the board of SEIU Local.
The board of directors, yes.
Okay.
And a little bit of context, there are kind of like two parallel tracks. There's the board of directors, the BOD, as we call it, and it consists of all the DLC presidents and the 9 bargaining unit chairs. There's also the statewide bargaining advisory committee, which I'm an elected member of the SBAC, and we were supposed to have a meeting in July, but it has been since postponed in December. And that July meeting is where we would elect our new bargaining chairs. And so the bargaining chairs have not been reelected. And so therefore this board of directors on this side is operating with the old bargaining chairs and new DLC presidents. But there will also be other board of director meetings taking place, and so they can govern the organization. Well, there haven't been any regularly scheduled board of director meetings. They've all been postponed until December, although there have been 2 emergency board of director meetings to discuss a contract that for our staff, for SEIU staff, and they're represented by UAW 2350. So totally stand in solidarity with them as well. And then a board of director meeting about the prison closures and trying to donate money to that effort as well. And so these emergency meetings didn't allow for other agenda items about the normal governing of the organization.
And how often is a meeting how often is a board supposed to meet?
They're quarterly.
Okay.
They're quarterly. So we've missed 2 so far.
Right.
July and October.
Okay.
So the one that is regularly scheduled is in December. So the board of directors has been calling for meetings, and they've asked President Brown to have a meeting. President Brown has responded with, I had the emergency meetings. Well, in this case, a majority of the board of directors said, we're going to hold a board of director meeting without you then. If you won't call a regular meeting, we're going to call for a meeting. And so they followed the policy file. They asked for attendance. They got quorum. They made decisions at this board meeting. And so that's what happened this past weekend.
Okay.
And all these folks came together to govern the organization.
Now, this meeting wasn't just sort of business as usual, though, right? What they would be doing on any given board of directors meeting. They ended up sort of making some pretty strong structural changes to SEIU Local 1000. And it's based off of what they view as, what I would assume they view as just not great leadership from President Brown, right? What were some of the big changes they made? I mean, didn't they make it so basically he has the same amount of power as any one member on the board now?
Basically, yeah. What they did was, they, in the current policy file, and I kind of want to say that at every board meeting, there usually are policy file amendments that are introduced. And so I do think that that's still part of every board meeting. And
Sure.
So these policy file amendments, though, as you have identified, were pretty large structurally. And it was basically this idea that the president, and this critique I've heard even when President Walker was president, the previous president, was that there was too much power within the president's hands, even back then. And so I want to point out that this was not just solely in reaction to how President Brown has behaved, but I will say that, President Brown canceling these meetings of the SBAC and the board of directors and only holding the agendas to these emergency meetings hostage is, at best, blocking the governance of the organization.
That's what it appears to be.
Yeah, it just isn't. It doesn't help us. So these changes were so that it could continue, that governance can continue, the board of directors can make decisions. So it is more of a shared leadership model. What they decided on one of the amendments, policy file amendments, is that there would be a chairperson that was named to run the board meetings, especially if President Brown refused to preside over a board meeting. then we needed a chairperson to do that. I say we, although I'm not part of the board of directors.
Right.
But the board of directors needs a chairperson to run it, so they made that change. They, I believe, created or they enhanced a litigation committee because they were concerned about some of the ramifications and legal ramifications of what's going on. I talked about the 2 lawsuits, and so they wanted this litigation committee to kind of have a better and deeper understanding and control of what's going on with respect to that. And yeah, so those were kind of like the big things to make those changes and protect the organization and make sure that it can continue to govern itself, and that if anybody wants to get in the way, that we can work around that and we can organize around that.
President Brown came out sort of swinging against what happened over the weekend, and I think he pretty strongly accused them for kind of sort of making a racist move, right? That this is a racist move against a Black man who was elected by a plurality into this position. I mean, I don't know. I don't even feel like, I guess, like, what are your thoughts on that? And then, like, and I don't know how much comfortable you are even discussing on a larger level, but do you think the decision that was made was a correct thing, an incorrect thing? The laws that, or the new sort of changes to the bylaws that were ushered in over the weekend?
Yeah. Let me start with, there was a third bylaw change, and it was about basically how discipline is handed out and meted out.
Right.
And so it's not necessarily a structural change, but as far as discipline, it used to be in the hands of only the president. And there was a concern that is again too much power given to one individual, and so being able to share that.
He had been sort of threatening to discipline anybody who attended this sort of meeting, right?
Correct. And what I hear is that, so there are 4 statewide officers, the 1 president, and then 3 vice presidents. And the 1 statewide officer, vice president, that came and attended the meeting, from what I hear, they were locked out of the building today, which in my mind is like immediate retaliation against anyone that participated, and
cause and
basically
effect.
Living or operationalizing the email threats that he was sending out earlier in the week and in the weekend. So I think it's pretty clear, like, it's not just a coincidence that this shared responsibility and this shared leadership model is necessary. I do believe that no one person should have all that power, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we must take care of one another. We must hold each other accountable. We must hold each other, in care, in order to do like what's best for one another and for our organization, so and for the community at large. So I do think that these changes are welcome. I do know that some people have questioned, well, what if you get a president that you get along with? Would you change it back? And I don't think that we would have to. If you get a president that is really a strong leader, they'll be able to work with all of that shared power, and I think we've seen great models of that in the movements that we've observed. They've never been about one individual. They've always been about the collective, and that's really important to me.
Thank you for actually really fleshing that out. Let me circle back to what I asked. That was sort of like one part of a 3-part question there about his accusations of racism. he called the meeting a, quote, lynching with a carefully crafted castration to silence and destroy an outspoken, educated Black man who has exposed the humongous hypocrisy of Local 1000. This out-of-order meeting offers the real truth about some white people's liberal lies of promoting Black Lives Matter while secretly despising strong Black men in power and authority who sincerely challenge the status quo. Obviously, you know, you're not on this board, you did not call this meeting, so there is no onus on you to answer that. But what are your thoughts on that quote?
Like most of his rants, that is an incoherent, just blithering of statements that fire people up. As someone that did not want to continue our human rights committees, which include the API caucus, the Native American committee, the Lavender committee, the Hispanic committee, and the Veterans Committee, and he discontinued our Black Lives Matter discussions on Fridays. He's kind of always said that, like, he doesn't want to talk about that these categories and these things serve to divide, and yet he does not refrain from using race when it suits his own purposes to paint himself like a victim. And so I give no credence to that statement and feel that there's just no truth to it, because he wants to paint himself like a victim, and that is part of his strategy. It's a strategy that we witnessed among other elected officials, and I'm seeing through it, quite frankly. I'm seeing through it. There have been many leaders in our present and through our history that even when they were the victim, they did not play the role of the victim, even when they were the victim. And to me, that takes major character, like major gravitas, and it shows how great of a leader that individual is by not being not meting out retribution, not, you know, saying like, oh, it's not my fault, it's all their fault. It's this mirror, it's that mirror window problem where everything that's good, you're looking in the mirror, but everything that's bad, you're looking out the window that it's someone else that caused it. And a lot of leaders fall into that trap. And I'm looking for a leader that's not going to fall into that trap.
So I think there's maybe just one or two more questions on this. And I think the biggie is sort of what next? You know, you look at what happened here. This is a very strong structural shift that took place as a result of this meeting. I think there are a lot of legal questions. I think there are questions over who would and would not win in a legal battle between President Brown and the rest of the board. Which side are SEIU Local 1000's lawyers going to represent, right? Like what happens next? This has to feel a little uncomfortable and maybe even a little scary for some rank and file members.
Yeah, I think ultimately it does come down to the same thing always, that it must come down to that wall-to-wall solidarity that I was talking about. And we have to organize. These board of directors that organized this meeting, they did it without the benefits of the structural support from the machine. People traveled from Southern California. People, they found meeting space. They weren't even allowed to meet in the local, at headquarters. They weren't allowed to meet there or use any of the locals' resources. But they found and they organized with other folks that were in solidarity with them, and were able to make it happen. And so bottom line, what it comes down to is that any of us that cares about Local 1000, that cares about the community, that cares about California, that cares about the labor movement, we have to organize together, right? We have to really get educated on all the things that requires us to push. You know, like I'm personally also involved in the Medicare for California campaign that CNA is putting on.
That's California Nurses.
Yes, California Nurses Association. I'm really intrigued, of course, by all of the bargaining for the common good that many of our teachers unions are involved in, California Teachers Association and all of the different affiliates there. And it's about like organizing, not just for ourselves, but organizing for everyone, you know? So I know the local ACE chapter that's pushing for housing. I know there's many organizations that are pushing to create housing for the unhoused. And all of these movements, like we need one another. We need
it's all intertwined.
Yeah, we need to support one another in order to like really create that structural transformation that we all want to see in the state and in the world. So it comes down to that, to get together with like-minded folks that are willing to like go to, you know, get in the streets with one another and stand, you know, back to back for support, shoulder to shoulder through it all, and, you know, just stand with one another. And that's what it's going to take if we really want to make the difference here, you know. So it's not just for Local 1000, but it's for everybody.
You know, we do have one more very important topic to discuss today, but I'm so thankful you came and talked about this. And the final question, you just seamlessly circled into it, the answer without me even asking it, which is, what's the call to action here? And it sounds like it's pretty simple. It's organize, solidarity, organize, right?
Yep, that's it. I mean, it all comes down to that. And solidarity is not just feeling, you know, empathy towards the plight that someone else is going through. Like solidarity is straight up being willing to be with them, you know, through rough and smooth, creamy and chunky, sweet and sour, all of that, and just really like be with them through it all, and in the good times and the bad. And I think when you care about others in that way, you know, I think biblical theologians will call it agape love. But when you care about others in that way, then you're really gonna like just transform not just yourself, but everyone around you. And I think that that's super important, that we get away from that, you know, the crazy mantras of rugged individualism, and, you know, nobody does it by themselves. We've all benefited from someone else, and when we acknowledge that, like it's a much richer existence and a much richer life.
Yeah. Bobby, thank you so much for coming and talking with us about this. We are moving on to another topic that I think actually is pretty important to you too. I think you and I have talked a number of times over the years about decolonization. So please stick around and please just talk with us on this one.
Absolutely.
Great. Shannon?
Yes.
Can you tell me what's going on with a certain story? There's a bit of an update on, as we all know, last summer of 2000, I think it was the 4th of July, the statue of Junipero Serra, the what was it, Catholic
Franciscan priest, yeah.
priest, was torn down in Capitol Park, and now it appears that there are some updates there. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Yeah. So it was July 4th of 2020 that in at the state capitol, that statue was defaced and torn down by protesters. Junipero my apologies, Sarah.
In radio, we're supposed to practice this beforehand, but I
have
still
said
get
his
it
name
wrong.
so many times, and I don't know why in this exact moment I
Yeah.
decided to like skip over my words. It's also the name of a street in the city I was born in that I drove on all the time. Anyway, we can talk about how horrible this man was in a bit. But that statue came down in a wave of statues of colonizers that came down over that summer. Here in Sacramento, the district attorney Anne-Marie Schubert has decided to file felony vandalism charges against one of the protesters that participated in tearing down the statue, and that allegedly. And that charge does come with up to 3 years in jail and up to $50,000 in fines. I think the thing that is important, outside of pointing out the construct of the crime, is that this recently, I don't even know the date that it happened, but Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 338, which is a bill that says that tribal nations of California can be a part of planning, construction, and maintenance of a monument honoring tribes of the region. And this monument would be one that takes the place of the Serra statue.
How beautiful. Yeah.
So there's this agreement, right, that statue should no longer be a part of Capitol Park grounds, and that there should be work done to honor the native peoples of the Sacramento region by erecting a monument to them and their rich traditions and deep history and contributions to the community. So I guess it's Robin Epley, who is a Sacramento Bee opinion writer, wrote once, I feel like the last time I talked about something that she wrote, I think it was the first thing that I had read, and I just proclaimed my love.
Yeah.
Because she came out of the gates swinging, and she did that again, asking some really good questions about, if we have a governor and legislators who are willing to say that the statue shouldn't be there, then why are we why is the district attorney actively pursuing punishment for those who allegedly brought down the statue?
It's a great piece, right?
I think it's great. I love to think about it, and thinking about it actively, thinking about the questions that she asked, and
how does it make you feel? Oh, okay, you love it.
Yeah, I'm just roll right through that. I love it so much. I'm not even going to stop for you to ask me the question.
Let's continue to flesh this out too, right? This happened at a time when there was actually a time of solidarity between Black Americans and indigenous folks throughout the country were coming together in solidarity with each other. And the Black Lives Matter folks were saying, no, we support the taking down of these colonizer statues, in the same way that the indigenous folks were saying, we support taking down these Confederate statues, these symbolisms of slavery, right? I think what's also really interesting is that There have been numerous instances throughout the country where folks were not given tough charges, or the charges were thrown away, or they were given community service. But District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert continues to be really the monster that we have sort of seen her be the last few years. You know,
Right.
the same person who held a national news conference a year after Stephon Clark was murdered in the backyard of his grandmother by Sac PD officers, and she once more assassinated his character, just to reopen the wounds of his family, right?
The same person that has not charged any police or law enforcement officers
Correct.
for any, related police involved shootings and murders,
Yep.
and who has accepted so much money from the
Right.
police unions that are out there, and associations.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
Those were scare quotes, by the way, listeners, that Bobby used under police union.
it is a perfect, albeit incredibly frustrating story and now lived experience of this person who is facing these charges, of what happens when local law enforcement, or folks who have the power really build out what crime is, right? Like this construction, crime is a construct, and I think this is a perfect example of that, because we have this situation where there is AB 338 that exists that says, yep, let's get rid of that statue and put something else in its place that makes more sense to honor the Native people of California and of the Sacramento region. And yet we have a district attorney who is holding up this, like she's created this definition of a crime that just doesn't, like to what end?
Right. And this is when Robin in this piece, talks to indigenous leaders throughout California, they say that the people who pulled down the statues, they said, who is this? It's Morningstar Gali, a member of the Jumawi band of the Pitt River tribe and project director of Restoring Justice for Indigenous Peoples, said Sacramentans should be thanking these protesters, not incarcerating them. Quote, they are heroes in our eyes. They are warriors in our eyes. It's important for us to be in solidarity and support of those that were ready and able to take a stand. And can I just give a little background on this person too, that is really having the book thrown at them. This is one of the best people you could ask to meet. You talk about solidarity, you talk about the really tough boots on the ground work.
Yeah.
They are there with so many causes out there all the time doing the hard work. And when all this went down, they dealt with the most violent, oppressive behavior from the state imaginable. They had their home raided. They were interrogated. They were in jail for periods of time and not allowed to be freed. They were, they had their family bothered over this. Like, this is state terror that Anne Marie Schubert and, federal probably forces were engaging against a really, really good person. And so you look at this and you see Anne Marie Schubert, who claims to be this like shining pillar as a woman who's a lesbian, the shining pillar of the LGBT community. She is taking this side of a literal statue, a literal monument that's paying homage to one of the most violent racist colonizers in California history, taking that side over a just stand-up Sacramentan who would give you the shirt off their back. And this is a person who is a trans person of color. And this is where Anne-Marie Schubert's principles lie. So I think, we talk about, Bobby, you mentioned her refusing to ever charge a cop. She's never met a cop that she wanted to charge for murder. We mentioned the terrible assassination of character that she did against Stephon Clark that just re-traumatized his family. And now we talk about this, and this woman wants to be the attorney general of our state. She's going to run to be attorney general, and she thinks she can win if she continues to do stuff like this. Just like, to me, there's just no way. There's no way she can possibly succeed.
It's terrible. I mean, it is putting, for those of us that believe in equity and believe in putting people over things, like, she doesn't represent that at all, right? Like, she's more focused on this statue, more focused on the process. Like, she's not worried about process rather than impact. It's all the worst things of white supremacy and capitalism and racial capitalism that there is, for all of us that are that were raised out here in California. Like, I remember doing my mission project in 4th grade, and I actually had to do it twice because I was in 4th grade twice. I did it on the same mission. I wasn't dumb. I just didn't meet their standard. And yeah, like, we learned about Father Serra, and I'm a Roman Catholic too, right? So, like, I mean, Father Serra is deified and saint, a saint.
Well, he's been canonized. He's
yes,
2015, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this speaks to, like, even like I ended up going to UC Davis and got my ethnic studies degree and learning about, forms of oppression and like how, again, we must organize to fight through that oppression. And that's what's happening here, like, in our community. And we know that for those of us that talk about healing and trying to heal from these old wounds and things, we believe, right, that lasting social change, yes, it requires equity and the changing of laws and policies, procedures, systems, structures, norms, guidelines, so that we can establish and maintain conditions. But it also requires cultural safe spaces. It requires time and resources. It requires processes and skills to talk about healing and equity. We need intention and values, and we need leadership to create the healing that will affirm and change attitudes and behaviors. All of that is to say, I went to elementary school and high school with Jesus Tarango, who is the head of the Wilton Rancheria, who represents the Miwok, the Plains Miwok folks of the Sacramento Valley. And so shout out to Jesus and the tribe and all of the cultural keepers of our community and of one another. So just shout out to all them as well. And so
this statue will be on Miwok land, right?
Yes, it's going to be on Miwok, Plains Miwok land, and Nisenan land. I also struggle with the whole, like, that they had strict boundaries, because they didn't,
Yeah,
they didn't, but I know that, like, on our maps we, like, do this, but
we tend to politicize lines. Yeah,
it was more blended than that, I believe. And even for me as a Filipino American, I learned a lot about Indipinos, because Filipinos immigrated here to the US on a ratio of like 30 men to 1 woman. And because they couldn't, there were there were laws that prevented them from marrying white women. They married into the indigenous community. And so there are many Indopino folks up and down the West Coast that became tribal leaders and everything like that. And it's just a wonderful story of folks coming together, supporting each other. And those are the kind of stories that we need to hear more about.
I think that this, what's happening with this is just an unfortunate reminder of the grip that white supremacy continues to have on leadership, and specifically on leadership that finds itself in any sort of like affiliation or partnership with law enforcement. And I think that like the other part of this is that it sort of acts as there's like a built-in call to action with something like this, which is to say, that we can use our voices in support of the like feet on the ground organizing efforts to make sure that that we get rid of these statues and monuments and like public spaces that essentially deify colonizers who were murderers. Like, and those of us that live with the trauma with that like generational trauma of what the Catholic Church did to our family and what they stole from us, like this story is so weighty. And for indigenous folks who have a clear line to their family history, like we are all connected, right? Like we are all family, and this really brings up a lot. And that quote around or that quote about like that indigenous folk really see these like organizers and protesters as like warriors, I think is what the word was. Mm-hmm. Really resonates. And so anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying that I think that it's an obvious marker that there is still so much work to be done. And if, we read this piece from KQED that talks about sort of like what the next steps are if you live in a space that has any sort of monument to colonizers, and how you can use your voice to get in contact with your elected officials to let them know that you're not down with having that shit in your community, by sending letters and making phone calls and, the things that we are often asking people to do on this show.
So you're telling me to use my voice and not like a large chain and the pulling power of me and 9 friends?
I mean, I have a friend whose mom always says, do what you want, you will anyway. And I'm not here to tell you how to live your life.
I interrupted you though, and you were making an important point. And they were saying contact your local officials if there are monuments to colonizers that you think should be removed. And when I look at that piece, it reminds me that indigenous folks in California have been fighting this for, documented well over half a century, right? These statues, like this storyline, this narrative, and have been just frustrated at every turn and ignored at every turn. And I don't know, I look at what happened in the summer of 2020, and sometimes I'm just like, what did you expect? Like when you refuse to listen. And like, that's not to say that like what, folks did around the country wasn't a crime. It's a construct, as Shannon said, like it is the crime by the construct of US law. Uh, but as Robin said in her piece, that doesn't mean what they did was wrong. And um, and for that, I think, we should be reaching out to all of our, within the storyline of this Anne-Marie Schubert thing, we should be reaching out to all of the electeds that we know and perhaps don't know, and say, lean on AMS to not push forward with these draconian charges, because it's not right. There are worse criminals in our region. This is a waste of your time, and our tax dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of that reminds me of something that my mom used to tell me, which was, Bobby, don't just do things right, but do the right thing. And so that's what we have to ask ourselves in this generation, on what is it that we're going to do that's the right thing right now.
Love it. Shannon, I need you.
Oh yeah. So sorry, I was thinking about, I got really stunned for a moment because I was like, I want a place where I can like listen to people talk about things that are important, and then they can help me decide to do the right thing. Like they can just give me the steps, right? Because like I'm busy, I got shit to do, and I can't like always just come up with these steps on my own. So like if I wanted to listen to something that would just help me do the right thing, Kempa, do you know what I could listen to and where I could listen to it?
It's a lovely question.
Thank you.
And I don't think there is any right answer to it, because there are just people all around us with lived experiences that can enrich us and teach us really what are the perfect takes in all different directions. But one place I know that they do their best to collate the perfectest of takes that they can find is a place called Voices River City. You can find our podcast on all podcast platforms. We are at voicesrivercity.com. We are almost 200 episodes in of just takes all over the place. When we first started in 2017, it was news and arts coverage, plus a lot of really cool community essays of folks speaking truth to power. I kind of want to start that up a little bit more again. I'm actually restarting some stage reviews here locally. The next one you're going to be reading actually will be from Cap Stage, where the Proud Boys actually recently threw some paint on their Black Lives Matter murals. So it's all connected, all of this stuff, whether we like it or not. We're on the socials: Facebook, Voices River City; Twitter and Instagram at Voices River City. You can buy some like koozies or t-shirts or mugs from us, stickers, voicesrivercity.com/shop. And we're on Patreon if you want to support us, although we're doing all free episodes now. So support us because you like us and you want to see more of this stuff, basically. Otherwise, like you're going to get all the good stuff from now on. So we'll have events coming up. We'll let you know about those. But for now, I can be found on Twitter as Kempa at YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I'm at Shan. Pardon me. I'm choking on a mint. I'm at Shan N.D. Stevens.
And Flo can be found at, she actually got locked out of her Twitter account.
Yeah, she did.
But she got back into it. They tried to like make her give them like 6,000 Bitcoins or something, but Flo's got her account back. She is at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE. Skylar is the name that made him famous, Guillotine for You, at Guillotine, the number 4 YOU. And Bobby, how can we find you online?
I'm at Expo 125. That's XPO 125.
Love it. Once more, Bobby, just a joy having you on. Thanks for all you do, and thank you for providing that perspective tonight.
It was a
Yes.
plum-pleasing pleasure as well as a privilege.
All right, what do you say, Shan?
Let's
we
get the
call
hell
it?
out of here.